All right. Hi, Jen. It's good to see you
Hi,
today.
Heidi. Good to see you too.
So, for our audience, I'm Heidi Marlinghouse, and I'm really excited to be working with the Children's Guild on the Kids First Conference. And this is my partner, my teammate, Jennifer Osger. Jennifer, can you introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you, Heidi. Jennifer Osger, and I'm really happy to have this conversation with you. And I think we should just get started.
All right. Um, so, hey, Jen, what really excites you the most about working on this project, the Kids First Conference with the Children's Guild?
Well, I think the reason I'm so honored and excited to be a part of this is how I became a part of it is, I've been teaching for now, this is my 21st year, but a couple of years ago, I got involved in some speaker series about equity work with the University of Pennsylvania and the Delaware Valley Consortium for Equity and Excellence. And one of the speakers that I had seen was Frank Cross, and he's from the Children's Guild. And really, he was talking about brain-based strategies and trauma responsive teaching and just everything that I have really come to adore in education and how to best serve children. And so he was telling me of the conference, and he's a great connector of like-minded people. And so that's how I came to work on this conference. And that's what excites me most, is that there's such an alignment of what we think is so necessary and important for children.
Yeah, so you and I have a lot of similarities. I started teaching 20 years ago, 21 years ago now in 1999. And I got into education because I really wanted to make a difference in children's lives that carried on through their adulthood. So I really wanted to teach them life skills and, social emotional well-being. Um, that was pretty much the basis of what got me into education. And so from there, naturally I just went into the brain-based learning and high quality engagement and things that really fit with our humanness and how we learn as human beings, and that whole child type of learning. And so I actually came to the Children's Guild and the Kids First Conference through you. And when we first started talking to them and listening to what they were about and reading the Children's Guild website and all of that, I got really excited because I was like, yeah, this is right in line with where I've been with education. And I actually, I was teaching up until last year. I left the classroom to go out and try to make a wider reach. And so this is one way that I get to reach a little further than just the 20 kids in my classroom or just the school that I was at, because I didn't feel like I was making that much progress in the overall system. And so, being part of a conference like this, where we can reach so many um, change makers and education leaders, really feels like it's an opportunity to make a difference in the system, not just in one location. So that's what excites me about this.
Yay. I echo that too. So I like your answer. So I'm going to build upon that by saying, um, I see so much potential and so much optimism for what will come as a result of this whole movement that they're kicking off. So um, are we ready to do our fast five?
Our fast five, we have 5 questions that we just love because they go deep and they go quick, and they get right to the heart of the good stuff, which is kind of how I do things. I was visiting with my uncle over the weekend, and I said something, and he turned to my aunt and he goes, "Isn't that just like Heidi? She gets right to the personal stuff."
I think there's something about people who really live in empathy that I I find that a lot too, where people can just really open up with me as well. And I think it's when you do the social emotional learning component, um, people feel that, and there's a magic that happens, and especially with the types of questions that we have been trained to ask. So let's get started.
All right, so I'm going to ask you first. If somebody was to look you up on the internet, what would they find?
So I'm hoping that what they would find first would be my website that I have created and am constantly tweaking, and it's jenformation.com. It's information and transformation. So they would find that, and they might also find some webinars that I've been a part of and some people's podcasts and things like that. So I probably would pop up on YouTube, and also maybe some posts that I've made about brain-based moments, positive conversation, positive psychology.
No.
So what would they find if they Googled you?
Well, they might find me in a variety of places. I've been a fitness instructor and, like I said, a school teacher. So they might find me in some of those websites that maybe haven't been adjusted if I'm not in those schools anymore. I've Googled myself before and found myself in a school from like 20 years ago, my first school. So that could happen. But mostly they're going to find me in education consulting. So I've been part of SEL Solutions, who actually is the organization that's working with the Children's Guild back when I was living in California. And since I've moved to Oregon, I've gone off on my own with EQQE Consulting. And so they'll find my website there. And that's where I can be contacted at the moment. Anyway, but all of that will be me working with other educators, and maybe there'll be some videos. You and I have done several of these kinds of interviews with a variety of educators and people that are change makers in education, and they might find some of those videos as well over on YouTube.
Cool. Do you want to ask me, do you just want to ask all the questions and then I reflect back, or do you want me to ask the next one?
Well, let's flip flop. You go.
All right. So very simply, what has been one of your proudest moments doing your work, and what would you contribute to that success?
Well, my proudest moments are really when I see other people benefiting from what I give. So a lot of times I'll have students who I've taught some EQ skills to, where they can be autonomous and make good decisions and have quality conversations through disagreements and whatnot. And when I see them going off on their own and I can overhear them using those skills, it just totally fills me, because I know I'm making a difference in someone's life. And so I think those are my proudest moments. And it's not always with students. Sometimes it's with adults or with a whole organization. When I see that a shift in how they're engaging with one another in an organization, then I have the same kind of proud moment. And I think that what really lends itself to my success is that I try to live that. I live what I teach. And I'm always checking in with myself to see if, you know, am I keeping my side of the street clean? Am I taking care of my own emotional well-being, my physical well-being, and the well-being of others? And is it in the right order? Because as a teacher and a servant type person, I can give too much to others and not give enough to myself, and then I become depleted, and then I don't have enough to give back. So I'm always kind of checking that balance of, you know, how much am I giving to them and how much am I giving to myself, and am I using these tools? Am I modeling it on a daily basis? And I'm not perfect, no human being is, but I do my best, and I feel like that comes across. And when I'm honest like that with the people that I work with, then they start to pick it up too. Yeah, those are my proudest moments. How about you?
You know, it's difficult to pick one, or, you know, in isolation. So like you, in general, I think when I am very grateful and proud of what I'm able to affect is when I ask a question, and the question that I ask can change their lives. a lot of times, I like to be on mom groups and things like that, and people will ask a question, and a lot of people give great advice and will weigh in and say, oh, this, or try this. And usually my first response is a question. Well, how old is your child? Or when did you notice that start? Or I'm wondering what would happen if you did this. And when I ask the question, it causes people to pause and reflect and connect and see patterns, or, again, like what started a certain issue for them. And then all I'm doing is giving them the ability to have their infinite wisdom. And then the answer will bubble up. I don't give out answers. I give out questions, and then people are like, whoa, I never really thought about it like that. Whoa, and one example, I mean, I do that all the time in education, and trying to get a student to write an essay, and they're like, oh, I think I'm going to look that up now, and help them to be curious. But there was one specific one, like a year or two ago, where someone hadn't slept for longer than 2 or 3 hours a night, and for a very long time. And I just said, well, when did that start to happen? And they're like, oh, it was about 20 years ago. And I said, and what happened 20 years ago? They're like, I never put the two together. And so from that conversation, they made peace about a thing. And then the very next day, they came back and told me, I slept for 6 to 8 hours last night. I'm like, it was just a question. So that's my biggest thing, is curiosity is a word that I've really been embracing, because when you're curious about things, anything's possible.
Yeah. Well, I've actually had that very experience. I was going through a time of really deep soul searching and whatever, and a friend of mine said, oh, you should go see this person. And all the person did was ask me a bunch of questions. And it was a thread that led back to, when I was born, basically. And as soon as I had that realization, that connection of what was going on, my emotional state calmed, and I completely changed. It was overnight. It was just like, wow, I've never had such a powerful experience. So yeah, you're right. Questions are really powerful, and they can change a person's life. And what else I like about that is it's very brain-based, right? I mean, we know that we learn through doing. We don't learn through passive information. We don't learn by sitting and listening. We learn by interacting with one another and thinking it through for ourselves. I mean, I can tell my kids what to do all I want, but they're not going to get it until they experience it and maybe even have the idea themselves, right? So for me to ask my children about their input and what are their ideas is much better than me just telling them what to do. And as a parent, I always try to ask my kids the questions first and have them come up with 3 ideas before I give even one idea, so that they have that involvement and they're really learning from the core, right? So, yeah. And that's part of what makes you such a good teacher too, Jen.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to go on to the next question. Can you tell me what you've been most passionate about lately?
I guess because I just mentioned it, curiosity. I Googled curious leadership, and that's not a phrase, so I'm claiming it. I think a good leader asks the right questions and then gives people the freedom to play. And I think right now, that's what we need in our society. Through the challenges that we're having with COVID, global issues, that's one thing that can unite us, is strong leaders who have the courage to ask curious questions of people. And then we feel supported by these leaders for us to take chances and ourselves be curious. And I think that is what is going to take us to the next level in humanity. Talking about innovation and transformation, and we have information available to us with the internet, and we have so many opportunities right now to, like I said, take things to the next level, try things, and leverage what we know has worked in the past. How can we see that into the future? And right now, if we're in that present moment, we'll come up with a lot of interesting possible answers if we ask those right questions. How about you? What are you most passionate about?
Well,
Right now?
I love what you said there, and how we can really transform using the past and looking forward to the future. And what I'm passionate about mostly right now is climate and culture. And I see it out there in the world, where we're kind of feeling like there's a lot of division going on. I see it on Facebook threads and other social media where people are, pretty intense with one another. And I believe that we can agree to disagree. And I know over human history, human beings have been known for fighting for territory and war, and war over water, war over boundaries. But I feel like we're also evolved human beings, and we have the skills, the knowledge, and the tools to really be able to solve these problems in the world right now with more EQ skills and just a little more compassion for one another. I can be friends with somebody that I completely disagree with. I can hang out with them. I can have conversations with them. I can be pleasant with them. If they have a completely different point of view, I might have to, use some of my tools to limit my time or to guide the conversation, and also to just regulate my own emotions. And so that's what I'm really passionate right now, is creating those cultures and climates in school systems, because I feel like that's the heart of our world, really. I mean, children are in school in most countries, right? And so the more people we can reach through the school system, then the more it goes out into the national and international world. And from there, we change. But it starts with one person. Like for me, it starts with me. And then whatever I can spread, spreads. And then whatever any of those people can spread, spreads. So it goes out from small to big. And that's what I'm mostly passionate about, is bringing that message and bringing those tools and those skills to people so that we can take it out globally.
Awesome. We've got 3 more questions left, and we got a couple of minutes. So our third Fast Five is a follow-up. So when did that journey with you begin?
I think that journey for me has always been there from before I started teaching. As far as like really looking at the whole system, culture and climate in a school, that's been more in the last 5 years, where I've been in school systems that I saw were really thriving, and then I saw some that really weren't. And it was the kind of a light bulb moment of, why aren't we all thriving? Like, if it can be done over here, why isn't it being done over there? So yeah. How about you?
Well, the curiosity is, and the questioning techniques are what is exciting me right now. And that started, I'd say, about 2017-ish. I'd taken a sabbatical, and one thing led to another, and I was gifted training in appreciative inquiry. And I'm going to be really geeky because I'm kind of starstruck with David Cooper Ryder in Cleveland, Ohio, is the birthplace of appreciative inquiry. And I actually got a chance to train there at Case Western Reserve. So it's, from source, and got a chance to meet Dr. Cooper Ryder, and just understanding that the words that we use are so important, and the way we order them at the right time with a positive question, I've seen it change people like that. So that's when I started learning about appreciative inquiry. So do you want to do the next one?
Yeah, I muted myself because there's people eating cereal in the back and opening those bags, and the boxes are pretty crunchy sounding. Anyway, yeah, so the next question is about if you were to meet one person in an elevator and you could just totally like blow their mind, who would that one person be and what would you say to them?
I don't know if I have a specific person in mind, but maybe a type of person. And I say this with a little degree of humor, but I would say like someone who's very cynical about the interconnectedness of humanity, which can sound like very woo-woo or, something like that, but to just show them a picture of, and I have this on some of my slide decks, it's the picture of a tree and the lung, or the ball of fire from lightning and a neuron firing, and to say that, we are part of nature, we mimic nature, that repeated of expansion and contraction, that's what gives birth to babies, is to expand and contract. It's how we breathe and sustain life. The sea expands and contracts. Just to realize all of those things, and maybe they would start to think that, like what you're saying too, we all come from different places, but it's also so many things unite us. And so I think I'd like to kind of do that and tell them to look up fractals, because I'm a big fractal fan. How about
fractals.
you?
You got fractals behind you, Jen.
Yes, indeed. It's a tree.
And I changed my setting to match your setting a little more.
Okay.
I have trees behind me, and yeah.
Yeah, because I also like it because it's looking up at a tree, but it also to me reminds me of like if you had like a brain MRI type thing, like, so yeah.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to see how we are so much part of nature, how we're so interconnected, and how our cycles and the way we function is pretty much the same everywhere. And a piece of that makes it very challenging to change, right? Because these are like systems that have been here since the beginning of time. But when we have information and knowledge around how all that works, then we can also work to use it in our benefit, because sometimes we have behaviors and skill sets that we're using that could benefit us, but we're using them in ways that aren't. Like fear, for example, we are very fear driven, which is good for survival, but we don't have the amount of threat that we had when it was early man times, right? But everything feels like a threat. So today, understanding that and knowing how to work with it is really important. So for me, yes, who would I run into? I'm similar to you. I don't really have one person in general that I would want to run into, but it's more of a type of person, or a person in a certain position. I would love to run into anyone who has the ability to bring a whole system change to schools and have a conversation with them around what helps students to thrive and continue to thrive throughout their lifetime. And to have these conversations about neuroscience and things like fear and how that can affect us in the classroom, and how we can, use those tools that we've been born with that are just innate to us, and how we can use them to benefit us to be our best selves and to learn at our peak and to interact with one another, and then ultimately change the world, maybe even change the environment with that. I mean, if we're leading from a place of compassion and self-reflection and whatnot, then we can even change how we interact with the environment, because it is all interconnected, right? We are not isolated human beings on this planet. We are all part of the planet. So yeah, conversations like that would really make me happy, because if I was to meet this, school leader and have this conversation, then I know there's the opportunity to affect change within that system right there, within that school system. And I can be one of these people who wants to just go big, but I know if I start out big, it's not going to go anywhere. So, you know, one person at a time, one school at a time, one district at a time, one state at a time, that kind of thing.
That sounds like a great segue into our final Fast Five question. So,
yeah, so how do we bring this conversation into the schools? And what would the outcome of that be, like the ideal outcome?
so for me, ideally, and this is why I'm excited to be involved with the Kids First conference, is to find a tribe of like-minded school leaders who have the agency to bring you and me into their school districts, where we can have the space and create a safe container to ask life-giving questions. What do they see for their vision of their schools, and to have everyone at the table and have a voice, have the students answer those questions, and their families and custodians and social workers and paraprofessionals and teachers and admin, where we can all be honored for our wisdom of our experiences and to co-create those experiences for the children. How about you? How do you see this coming into schools and the outcome?
Yeah, I definitely see it as a whole system situation. I don't believe in like bringing an SEL curriculum into one classroom, or, you know, isolating it in a silo of one classroom and having that work. I really believe that it has to be something that is done with the families. It goes back to the house, you know, with the students, with every adult on campus, whether it be the bus driver or the crossing guard or the yard duty or the lunch person. Like every single adult has to have these skills, and everybody using those skills for themselves as a piece of who they are is how that change is going to really happen. And so being able to bring that home is important too. And I also don't feel that it works when it's just an SEL curriculum that came out of a box. I think there's a lot of benefit to those curriculum. There's a lot of information in there. That's one piece of the puzzle. I think when you have a community that comes together and builds what they want and takes the pieces that work for them and maybe leaves a few pieces out and pulls from somewhere else so that it best fits their community, that's going to be the way it works. Because we're not cookie cutter, you know, we're not cookie cutter as human beings, as a group of people in a school community. The school community for me down the street is very different from the school community across town, which is very different from the school communities back home, you know, in California where I came from. So we can't just have one thing that works for all of us. So to be able to be at this Kids First conference and to allow these school leaders to network with one another, and like you said, like-minded people, the more we can have like-minded people together, the more ideas we generate, and we're not just doing cookie cutter curriculum. And again, I like the cookie cutter curriculum for the information, but making it our own, I think, is really important. So anyway, yeah, conferences like the Kids First conference is one way to do that. Another way to do that is to bring in consultants like you and I who can support the school in keeping that going, right? And then making sure that those conversations start from each individual and then trickle out through the entire school community. I think that's where I've seen the most success with schools who've done it that way.
Well, and I think too, real quick before we bounce, is it's a journey, it's a relationship. You know, to create that culture that you mentioned in that climate, it takes a while to create it, and it also is a long-term relationship to sustain it as well. So that's what I'm looking forward to, is to make a bunch of different relationships with, like you said, like-minded, but also diverse people. And I'm really looking forward to this journey with Kids First, with the Children's Guild, and with you, Heidi.
Right back at you, Jen. And I just want to make sure that our audience knows that they can find us at the Kids First Conference on October 26th and 27th. We're a little bit behind the scenes, but we will be there listening to all of these wonderful presenters and getting involved with some of the interactive activities that they have for us and networking. So I'm really excited about that. And then after the conference, I can be found at eqqeconsulting.com, and my email is right there at the bottom of the screen. And so if anybody wants to connect with me after the conference or even before, you can reach me there.
And I'm right there. So,
You're right.
thank you so much.
All right, Jen.
All right.
We'll see you at the conference.
Indeed. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.